So, ladies first, Amy, please introduce
Yes.
yourself.
All righty. My name is Amy Tiemann. I'm the CEO of Team One Properties. I've been in commercial real estate for over 18 years. I started as a general contractor. I was building retail stores across the United States. I was in 16 states at one point. And then along that journey, I started real estate investing back in 2008. I've been in the multifamily game since 2010. I'm a full-time syndicator, fund manager, and I buy multifamily assets generally around Texas, but I'm also doing some build-to-rent developments in Florida. So that's me.
Bruce Fraser, Elkhorn Capital Partners. I saw some of you on a panel earlier, I think, but I didn't give my background, I don't think. I came at this a little bit differently than a lot of people. Didn't start off flipping houses or anything. I actually used to run a hedge fund for about a decade and successfully. It wasn't a huge fund, but it was, a lot of stress, that's for sure.
Joseph Bramante, CEO, Triarch Real Estate Partners, engineer by trade, worked for Exxon overseas, and then back in 2011, jumped into the multifamily business, bought my first deal while still overseas, got a crash course, hired some third-party managers out of the gate, and then ended up partnering with them. And we've been buying multifamily since 2011. The company, we've got $2 billion in assets of experience, 46,000 units.
Obviously, I was a general contractor, right? So I'm going to let anybody else manage my construction, whatever. So originally I was just doing everything, and I found it to be very limiting. So I switched to third-party property management as I grew, as I added assets and portfolios. And obviously I was buying around the state of Texas. So it was more of a strategic decision on my part to switch and then just asset manage. As you have to focus on key competencies, right? So I'm also chasing money, right? So part of my deal is I have some folks that capital raise from me, but not really. So I have a whole investor relations side of my business. And so you have to pick your battles on what you want to truly hone in on and get really good at.
I had hired a single family guy out of the gate because it was a small 26 unit apartment complex, and I didn't know anything about multifamily, and I was like, how hard could it be? So I'd hired this guy who managed houses, and he did a really bad job, naturally. That's when I joined this real estate group and met proper multifamily property managers and manager companies, hired my partners to come and clean up the mess that he created. And we went on and we did 4 deals together back to back. They did a great job. We did some major renovations together. If you're buying nationwide, there's certainly a case for that to go third party, because that's the risk when you go into other markets, is that you don't necessarily know. Like if I try to go to Atlanta or Jacksonville or wherever, I don't know that market. So I would definitely be leveraging the expertise of some property management company to understand, like, hey, is this a good deal or is this a good pocket, whatnot. We're not going to go and try and self-manage a deal out in Atlanta.
How do you jump off the cliff and take down these deals with confidence? Because I think there's a lot of risk inherent into the type of properties that you buy.
Most people see it that way. You're absolutely right, Jerome. And sometimes, actually, I mentioned an asset earlier that we bought during COVID. And even when we were buying that and just after, I was wondering, am I crazy to have bought this asset? It was such a rough asset. Everybody, you never hear anybody call an asset a D. This was a D. We're making it a probably B minus C plus, but at the time, everybody was questioning us. And, if we didn't have the experience and capitalization that we had, the banks wouldn't have done it. We got a local bank to fund it for us, that they had walked all of our other assets, seen what they were before and seen what they were after. And, the banker literally said, listen, we want to work with you, but this asset makes us nervous.
When I was vertically integrated, it was just, they were my employees. You find good property managers, right? And you manage that. So it's not, I do the same thing that Bruce does, right? I buy ugly, make it pretty, like all day long. I was a GC and that's what I did. Like those value add deals, I'm like a magnet for them. They just freaking find me. Like either that or it's because everybody's too scared to go chase them, right? And I'm not, I don't care. Foundation problems, roof problems, I don't give a flip. If you had like a shooting on the property last month, I'm good, right? Just don't let the bank know, right? So I can get a loan, right? So you just I don't care. I've kicked hookers out of vacants, and I've, had mattresses with needles, and I like seeing everything. But you do, because I hang out in that space because it's so easy to differentiate yourself. Like you could bring Wi-Fi onto the properties and you will have a waiting list 100 miles long because nobody else does it.
I don't have to tell my team how to manage because they already know how to manage. And so I don't have to tell them, hey, we're doing these distributions, now how to manage your cash flows, because everybody signed off on the pro forma. So one of the unique things about how we do it is we make everybody from, so we've also got in-house construction. So we do our construction, our acquisition, acquisition and our property management teams, they all sign off on the pro forma. So they know the expectations, they know the distributions that have to go out. So I don't have to spend time educating them on, hey, manage it this way. That's been done 5 years ago. And so that's one of the beauties when you go vertical, you don't have to keep re-educating every time you buy a property. My mentor told me this: a good manager company is going to break even. If it's making a profit, dude, it's doing something wrong. So you're not supposed to make a lot of money. They're not big cash cows. And so if you're scared about hiring a third-party manager because you think they're going to make all this money, they don't. That's why they need to have thousands of units for manager companies, because they're not huge cash cow machine.
I'm part of a mastermind group. Probably there are 8 of us, and we've been together for years. You've probably heard of some of them. It's like Michael Blanc, Matt Fairclough, Brian Burke. All of us are in this group together. And one of the guys has a property management. He did, and like you, because we're always discussing this. Should we take it in-house? Should we not? Because they're just, a lot of the property management companies, third party out there, are just not that. They're just not that good. You're dealing with employees that are not super high paid, and they haven't been business educated on what to do and what not to do. And so it's a tough business to oversee. But he's consistent, over and over told us just don't do it. He said, I thought I'd get better control and save some money and all this. He said, but yeah, it's basically a break-even business. It's really just to have better control if you feel like that's what you need. 2,000 to 2,500 doors is really what you need to have in a market to make it work. What we've seen is it's kind of the bookends. Early on in your career, you probably are likely to self-manage. When you have a house or two or a couple duplexes or even a 20 unit, 40 unit, you can handle that yourself. But once you get a little bit bigger, you're either going to build a property management company or outsource it.
If you have bad managers or bad partners on the management side, you're probably not going to get really great results. And that's why we waited almost 4 years before we decided to merge together, because I saw them perform, and they did exceptionally well on some major renovations. So that was kind of proof positive for me. I knew what I had. I wasn't going to miss the opportunity to not capitalize on it. One of the other things that happens is your underwriting of deals will improve greatly, because now you've got a lot of operational input there from your site or your operational experts there in the office that you can get to review your deals in a finer comb. Everybody sends their pro formas to the management companies, and when they're third party, sure. They're not really going to look at it too heavily because they want to get the business.
The 2 third-party property management companies that we use, we're their biggest client of both of them, and so they do care about hitting the numbers and whether we're happy or not. I think, and you don't have to be the biggest client, but you have to find the right. You can find a third party. I agree, a lot of them don't care, but you go through that same exact process where they're signing off on the budget when they're onboarding the property, and then those numbers are loaded into the plan, and that is what they're held accountable to. Now, you can set up the comp structure for them such that they are financially incented to meet that as well if you want to, where the fees go up or down based on performance. There are things that you can do.
So Amy, you brought up fair housing. For the folks who may not understand why there's risk associated with that, will you speak to that a little bit?
You always make sure you do not discriminate in housing, okay? That being said, I will say in my experience, most of the fair housing claims are fraudulent, and they just are. And so I'm just going to speak the truth. And you spend a lot of your time and effort to, obviously we do all the right things in how we're doing fair housing. And sometimes you have to go through audits, and I've been through that. That's no fun. It's just basically fair housing discrimination is you can't say, I only accept white people in my apartments, right? No joke. I bought from somebody, she only accepted Hispanic people in her apartments. Like, no joke. That's what that manager, and that's how she ran, and that's how it went. And so we had to really change that apartment complex. But you can't do that.
Not that I was doing anything wrong, but my team was always telling me, you've been doing this 10 years. I think everybody should take fair housing training if you're in the industry, just to know, because it is a very real thing. It's very easy to say the wrong thing or do the wrong, and unintentionally, and it can trigger something. And so absolutely what Amy's saying, but we've been doing this 10 years. We haven't had any claims. It's all about, we train our people really well, and there is some arm's length to it, but there's also some things that can come straight to the owner. We
build in ways to capture tenant experience and tenant satisfaction, right? So at different touch points in through your thing, we build in so when they first, the leasing process, we get it and obviously it's objective data, but who cares? Over time, it's going to trend and you're going to see if you're doing better or not. So we track, on the leasing workflow, how did that go for you? Blah, blah, blah. Their first day in the unit, we send them a little text message. Hey, how did you like your unit? Was everything really cool? blah, blah, blah. Every once in a while throughout the year, we'll kind of ping them upon renewal. Like any touch point, you're trying to gather satisfaction data. And if you do that,
we don't actually have to do the line item analysis. It's already pre-done by the technology. And then we just highlight the items that need our attention. But there are a lot of things, and not all of them are financial. I think that's great. The feedback, Amy, you're talking about, I think that does work out over time, even if there's a skew. You know, one of the property managers we're working with now, they're very tech forward, which we like. We're very optimistic about lots of KPIs. You know, we get a whole set of data every week automatically from them without our own data, but that's nice to have where you're not waiting till the end of the month. But they also work orders. You know, I think one of the things they say is your renewal starts when they move in, and so it's very costly to turn over a unit. You have to paint, do other things most likely. We all prefer to keep them in the units, and so it's best to keep them happy. And if they have a work order, they proactively reach out to them.
The only thing I hate about Appfolio is if you like going to Home Depot and paying a thing, it takes you the accounting stuff in Appfolio is like just a little hinky. Just saying.
Yeah, we use Resman. Not a huge fan of Appfolio.
I use Tableau too, just for my dashboards and stuff. And I'm telling the property manager, I really don't give a crap what you use. Whatever you're comfortable with is groovy. I just need to pull the data, and I need to see the data, and just give me an API and I can do that.
And the other thing, and this is kind of off topic, Jerome, I'm sorry, but it's just kind of a hot button for me since I spent so much time in an SEC regulated world, and we're so paranoid with dealing with other people's money that, it's a very, very serious thing when you're taking other people's money and investing it for them. You need to be very cautious with that. But, how you represent things and how you make claims about yourself, you need to be, I don't know, I lose I lose trust immediately with people when I interact with them. And I would be at like Michael's conference and I'll run across something like, oh, we have 10,000 doors. I'm like, holy shit, why don't I know? Why haven't we come across each other if you have 10,000 doors? Well, the reality is they're probably put 50 grand in a deal that had 1,000 doors, and I'm like, oh, come on, that doesn't count. Yeah. You're not getting the call from property management companies, and you're not getting the link when the SWAT team shows up to bust a drug. It's just not the same. And so I think it's much more honest, and I would be much more willing to help somebody that came to me and said, listen, I've got a 20-plex and I'm trying to get bigger, or hey, I helped raise money on a deal. I brought in $500,000 into a $30 million raise. I mean, but for somebody to do that and then claim all the doors or all the AUM, I think is incredibly disingenuous, and I immediately lose trust in them. And I think most investors that are sophisticated would as well. Because if they poke at a number and it's not a real number, they're not going to give you money.